In this video we will take a look at the installation of Proxmox backup server. To be precise, I will show you a standalone installation. So we will use the official installer, the official ISO image, and as described on the Proxmox website, this installer can be used to install Proxmox backup server on a dedicated hardware. Or for test environments, we can also use this ISO image to install Proxmox backup server within a virtual machine. And for this process, there's also this getting started guide on the official website. So basically there are 3 steps: downloading the ISO image, creating a bootable USB stick, for example with tools like Rufus, Edger or Ventoy, and then booting from this USB stick in order to start the installation wizard. So there's a graphical installer and also a CLI based one. And after the installation has been completed, we can also configure everything with a graphical user interface with the web interface of Proxmox backup server. Or if we want to install Proxmox backup server inside of a virtual machine, we can just mount the ISO image and boot from it. If I scroll up a bit, there's also this link to the full installation guide. So here we have also further details and also the system requirements. So for a test system, the minimum requirements are 2 CPU cores, 2 GB of RAM and 8 GB of storage. And furthermore, here we also have the recommended server system requirements. These are of course important if we want to run Proxmox backup server within a production environment. Yeah, and after booting the installer, we end up in the following menu. From here we can start a graphical installation or a CLI based one. In that case, I will start a graphical installation. We automatically get an IP address via DHCP. And after that we have to accept the end user license agreement in order to proceed. And now I can select the target hard disk. In that case that is a virtual hard disk with only 20 GB. When installing on a physical hardware, of course we need to make sure that we choose the right hard disk or SSD to prevent that data is overwritten and to prevent data loss. But in that case I can just continue by clicking on the next button. And the installer tries to find out the corresponding country via the public IP. And based on that, the time zone and the keyboard layout is also set. So I can just proceed here. And now I need to enter a password for the root user and also an email address. And now we need to provide these common network settings, like an IP address, subnet mask, the gateway, and also the primary DNS server. So these are the settings that were received via DHCP. But of course we can change the IP address or the other settings if needed. Furthermore, we also need to specify a host name, a fully qualified domain name. So in a corporate environment, usually server name dot the own domain name. Here in my test environment .lan is fine, and also PBS for Proxmox backup server. So I can just continue with the installation. Then we also get the summary. So we see that an ext4 file system will be created and Proxmox backup server will be installed on it based on Debian. And also further settings like the time zone or the key map and the network settings. Also by default an automatic reboot will be performed after the installation, and once I click here on this install button, the installation will start. Yeah, the installation was successful and now the reboot will be triggered. In my case the virtual machine again booted into the installer. So I will just disconnect the ISO image from the virtual machine in order to boot Proxmox backup server. Yeah, and after doing that, Proxmox backup server started without any issues. So we get this login screen, and here we also see the IP address and the port so that we can reach our web interface. And yeah, so far so good. So Proxmox server is reachable via this IP and port 8007 via HTTPS. Of course, we could also use the fully qualified domain name if it's resolved via DNS. And in order to authenticate, we can just use the root user and the password that we specified during the installation. Then we get this notification that we don't have a valid subscription, that we also know from Proxmox VE. But yeah, we can just continue after clicking on OK. And use Proxmox backup server in our test environment, also without a valid subscription. But of course, without a valid license, we won't get any enterprise support. But yeah, that's how we can install Proxmox backup server using the official installer, so a standalone installation. And in that case, the installation was successful. We can reach the web interface without any issues. Proxmox backup server is also booting up without any issues. And of course, I'm looking forward to exploring all these features of Proxmox backup server together with you in the upcoming videos.